Now that's significant. The Market Research Podcast.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on this latest episode of Now That's Significant, a market research podcast. This is your host, Michael Howard, the head of marketing at Infotools. Today we're joined by Kathy Cheng, founder and CEO of Nexxt Intelligence, the Toronto-based research technology company behind Inca, conversational AI, purpose-built for market research. Kathy is an entrepreneur with 20 plus years of experience in the market research industry. Deeply qualitative at heart, she founded Nexxt Intelligence with a conviction that quantitative research could be improved by adding a qualitative dimension and using qualitative principles of building rapport, engagement, projection, and probing to deliver deeper insight at scale. Prior to that, she worked at Ipsos and Environics in Canada and Nielsen in Shanghai. Thanks for joining us on the show, Kathy.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
You're welcome. So, Kathy, what's the most significant thing you're going to tell us today?
I'd like to talk about how technology is making market research more human.
I'm intrigued. It's generally not the line that people would hear, I guess, when they talk about technology. So tell us, what do you mean by this? In what ways does technology make market research more human?
That's so true, right? Especially these days with all the talks or speculations about AI, it seems like AI is making everything faster, cheaper, or dehumanize a lot of things. But our experience, at least what we have seen or what we choose to see probably, we do think there are a lot of opportunities to use technology to make what we do more human. Maybe I'll try to talk about that from two perspectives. One is from the participant's perspective. The second is from the researcher's perspective. So the participant's perspective, I mean, if we're honest, I wouldn't say market research is the most human thing in the world. Surveys, let's say surveys as an example. How many people actually enjoy doing surveys? So yeah, I definitely think, to me, many years ago, when I started to be more involved with a lot of like the quality check and all that stuff for quantitative surveys, the one thing that came to me immediately was, why are we as an industry complaining so much about people not paying attention while we're just throwing them really bad surveys? So yeah, so I think that's probably a pretty obvious thing for us to think about. There are opportunities to make that a little bit more human. And then researchers, I think we have a pretty interesting job. We really have the ability to really understand things, understand people. But I think for good researchers, we're storytellers. We really are, at least for me, I think a lot of times I feel very motivated or satisfied, rewarded when I am able to tell the whole story, not just some numbers, but also the whys behind the numbers, and also to dig really deep into that human motivations. So are there opportunities for technology to make this side of the job a little bit more rewarding? I think definitely there are as well. Hope that makes sense.
It does. So when you talk about technology, is there anything specifically that you're thinking of?
Yeah, so in our world, because we have been building conversational AI, so when we say technology, we do refer to AI very specifically. But I do think technology, broadly speaking, has been making our experience a little better, as human experience a little better, in our world, market research better too. I mean, just in terms of the look and feel of a lot of the platforms that we use, the experiences that we create for people, they have become more interactive. They have become more gamified. So that, not necessarily AI, but that itself is very good as well.
No, that's true. So your team at Nexxt have built conversational AI to reimagine online research. Can you give us an overview of what that is and how it reimagines online research?
So we have used conversational AI to create a quite different experience from, let's say, typical surveys, because typical surveys, it feels like participants, they're just doing their own thing, doing their own homework. Now we leverage conversation so that we have a chatbot behind the scene. We have a chatbot having conversations with people. Because it is AI, it is chatbot led, it can scale. We can basically literally have almost like in-depth interviews with however number of people we'd like to have. So that itself is a very, very different experience. And that is possible only because conversational AI has improved so significantly in the past little while. We've been building conversational AI for a very long time, for the past 5-6 years now. But I have to say, with the generative AI, the base model has improved so significantly. So now we are really having human conversations between a chatbot and participants. It's actually really cute. We really love reading the transcripts we get from our surveys. I always remember there's one time I saw the chatbot praised a participant saying, "Oh, that is very smart," and then the participant actually said, "You are too." So it's like a real conversation going on. That is actually very cute. Yeah. So essentially, that's what we do. We make conversations scale for research.
Yeah, nice. One thing that I am a big fan of with technology is that it shouldn't feel like you're using it. And if that is the case, then you've done your job well. I guess that's one challenge for market research as well, is it shouldn't feel like you're doing market research when you're contributing to things. Like that experience should be of that kind of level where it's a pleasing and a rewarding thing to do.
That is so well said. Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? I mean, because the whole guiding, I mean, we build technology, that is true, but the guiding principle of that is we wanted to add that qualitative dimension to quant. And the reason behind it is because for qual, it is very natural that we want to, first of all, make sure that people are comfortable. They don't feel like they're being questioned, that they're doing a research project. So with technology, we're able to do that in a quantitative environment as well. They feel that they're chatting with people. They're just sharing their experiences, sharing their opinions. Yeah, so I agree with you. That is almost like the first thing we have. We at least we'd like to do to make that happen.
So I guess that was a good little segue. If I were to ask you for 3 things, say, that excite you about leveraging conversational AI for online research, what would those be?
I'd say the first one definitely is participant engagement. So that's what motivated us to build conversational AI in the first place. And we've seen enough evidence that this is actually working, and this is rewarding as well. So we feel like that engagement has to come from people. First of all, they need to feel comfortable. Like I said just now, in qualitative, I remember vividly in the past when we did focus groups for certain demographics, we would recreate that living room just so that they feel like they're actually sitting in that living room. So if we use that and think about how we do surveys, people don't do surveys in their day-to-day lives. They chat with people. They're very comfortable chatting with people in WhatsApp, for example. So by creating that experience itself, hopefully is already making people comfortable. The second is, if it is a little bit more interactive, people feel like they're just not answering their own questions, nobody cares, but someone else on the other side is actively listening and is able to ask more intelligent questions. Naturally, they'll pay more attention because it's reciprocal. They know that their answers matter. Someone is listening. So yeah, so we've seen enough evidence for the engagement piece. Whenever possible, we ask at the end of a survey, ask people how they feel about the survey experience. The vast majority, across countries, across cultures, the vast majority of people say the conversational experience is better than typical survey experience. And another interesting thing, a lot of people actually feel the conversational survey is shorter than the actual length. when we ask them the actual length versus we also can monitor how long the survey itself is. So yeah, that to us is also a very, very good indicator that they're engaged.
Is it actually true that it's shorter, or is it does it sometimes extend longer as well?
Okay, so that's it's an important piece of contextual information.
We
did some research on research to compare two identical surveys built with the same questionnaire, one conversational, one standard survey, intended to be 10 minutes. The conversational survey actually was longer because people were putting in more information, was slightly longer. But the metric that I used before this was people who took the conversational survey, despite that it actually was longer, more people felt it was shorter. So yeah, that was interesting.
That's cool. So you touched on participant engagement. Are there any other things that excite you about?
Yeah, so that's my first one. The second one is the ability to probe deeper. I think as a researcher, I just a lot of times open-ended questions, honestly, just in typical surveys, I don't have high expectations. A lot of times they're not necessarily very, very useful, but sometimes they can still be useful. But then a lot of times we look at the open-ended results, we're just thinking, oh, I wish they could talk a little bit more. I wish they could just tell us why they said that. It just happens so often that it's inevitable that as a researcher, I would love to be able to just interject in the middle of them saying something to ask a little bit more. So yeah, that's the second thing. Now we have the ability to interject in a way that is encouraging, that is motivating. So at the end of a large, especially when it's a huge sample size, by the end of the study, if you didn't have the ability, it's just such a big regret. So I think this is the second thing that I'm very, very excited about. We can make better use of a study. We're doing it anyway, especially for hard to reach sample. We reach these people so difficult with so much, such a huge budget. At the end, you just wish that you could ask more. So yeah, so that's definitely the second part. So the third thing I'd say is in quant surveys, I think it's just the setup, and also people are more used to just check boxes. They're not trained to think more deeply, which is fair. But I think with conversational AI, when I say conversational AI, naturally probably people think about having a conversation and being able to probe. That's probably the more natural interpretation of conversational AI. What we do is, in addition to those, we also try to ask questions as if you were to have a real conversation. I remember very well when we had a new engineer joining us. We were he said he just told his family that he joined this company, and then we said, what did you say to the company? What did you tell your parents? Oh well, how did that happen? Oh yeah, okay, sorry, I'll backtrack. So when a new engineer joined, and then he said something about the company, and then we were just asking, what exactly do you think we do? He said, he really literally hesitated. He couldn't really articulate what exactly we do. And then we were talking about something else, and then he brought up his parents. He mentioned that he just joined this company to his parents. And then we asked, what did you say to your parents what we do? And then he started to talk about what we do in a really, really eloquent way. So that's a very, very simple projective. If you start to think about a specific situation where you're supposed to say something, it sometimes makes it a lot easier. That's probably a very simple example. There are just a ton of projectives where we can access people's emotions. So that's the third thing that I'm very excited about. So with a natural conversation, we have the ability to naturally add a lot of those projectives. Adding those projectives gives us the ability to help people a little bit, because sometimes it's not about people don't want to share how they feel. It's because they are not able to. So projectives are enablers. So by asking questions in such a way, even in a quantitative environment, we are able to help people a little bit so that they can access their emotions. So yeah, we've seen a lot of good examples of this. Every time we see how people really open up, how people at the end of the survey say, it felt like I just talked to my therapist. It felt like that's really rewarding.
Yeah, true. And I guess one thing you've also got with conversational AI is that speech to text is actually come a very long way now. So basically computers being able to understand what you're saying and write it out into text, and then the reverse of that as well. So when you think about that extra layer that you can add into conversational AI, you can have people comfortable talking through audibly, or some people comfortably talking through typing and text. You've got those two different elements there to try and capture the most accurate data.
Too. That's actually on our roadmap right now. We're text-based. It's conversational AI, but it's conversational texting basically. But we've got a lot of clients asking about voice to text, text to voice. So that's totally doable. There are definitely some challenges. For example, in Canada, Canada is a very multicultural country. We do a lot of multicultural research. So text to voice to text a lot of times isn't necessarily the most accurate. So there are still a lot of things that need to be worked on. But still, technology has improved so much. I mean, even translation, not too long ago, translation was really not reliable. But nowadays, I mean, transcript, if you just really want some quick understanding of what's going on, auto translation is probably good enough. So yeah, so that's another thing that very soon we'll feel very excited about.
Yeah, there's one thing for me too. So, I mean, there's been a lot of talk in the market about respondent experience and how there is a correlation between the quality of experience and the quality of data. What role do you feel technology plays in this regard?
I mean, naturally, you would think if people are engaged, they would provide more considered responses. They would pay more attention. So that's a natural instinct. Again, that was one of the objectives we had in mind. We felt if we provide our participants really the most precious resource for our industry, if we could provide them with a better experience, we should, to a certain extent, help with the whole data quality thing that the industry is facing. Yeah, so as of today, we've done some research on research. As I mentioned, we asked people, how's your experience? We know that most people do feel it's a better experience. And what does that translate into? We have also seen some metrics where, one, people provide in open-ended results, provide more detailed responses, more specific examples, more detailed, nuanced emotions, more stories that they share. So that is possibly obvious. We've also seen evidence where with the conversational experience, AI supporting the experience, we see better data quality as well. We did research on research to compare a standard survey with some quality control, but no quality control based on open-ended response versus a conversational AI survey with some quality control as well. The difference is pretty obvious. The data quality, just quantitative metrics, the correlation, the face value of the quantitative results, it's quite obvious. When people are engaged, they pay attention. The data seems to be more consistent, seems to be more convincing. So yeah, we think this is possibly still at early stages. I do believe two things happening in terms of data quality. One is to check the data quality the industry has been doing. I do agree that's necessary. Also now with the whole chatbot answering surveys, how can we combat that? That's a whole different conversation. The second is we need to assume people want to pay attention, want to do a good job to begin with. Right now, I feel that's possibly a little missing. We tend to focus too much on fixing the problem, that people are not paying attention. There are bad respondents. We try to find ways to kick them out in the middle of the survey. If we could do more to solve the problem from its source, to actually provide people with better experience, I think if we do both, we should see significant improvement.
Yeah, true. So one thing practitioners soon realize is the value of doing, the things you learn from experience. So over your time at Nexxt Intelligence, and considering how much experience you've had built up in the artificial intelligence, what's some advice would you that you'd give to market researchers who are considering using such technology?
I would say use it as much as you could, because from our experience so far, we really do think they make things better. So it's about the mindset, how open we are. There are lots of speculations. I do understand a lot of them. For example, like the whole privacy concern. I think that's probably, in my mind, that's probably one of the biggest hurdle. We do market research. A lot of times we test the client's proprietary concepts. Ads, for example, a lot of times we're testing them because they haven't been marketed yet. To what extent it's safe to share, to use AI to just put it out there. So these are really valid concerns, but I think these concerns are not enough to stop us from using it for many different purposes. Because if you're not using it, other people will be using it. So this saying has been going around for a while now. It's not that AI will take your job, it's people who know how to use AI will. I think it is very true. It is just going to be just a calculator, just one of the tools that we have. So yeah, we have, initially, we focused very much on just on asking that good follow-up question in the middle of the survey data collection process. But very quickly, we realized that AI really is very helpful. It can be used throughout the research process. From day one, you form some hypothesis to give some inspirations, ideas, almost like a sounding board in developing that questionnaire. And the whole data collection process, asking for more information, quality check, like all that, there's a role for AI. And nowadays, I think very soon, it's probably going to be almost like by default, any platform will provide some summarization, some auto text analytics solution, because it's just much more readily available today. So I think it's just happening. How to learn to make the best use of what's available to us for good purposes can only be beneficial.
Do you have any examples of clients that you can share that were initially quite standoffish about using conversational AI, then seen the results and just go, wow, amazing?
Yeah, we have a lot of clients. I guess ranging from completely skeptical to needing evidence to see how powerful, how different, like what's the difference between a traditional survey versus a conversational survey. So I can think of a couple of examples. I won't name the clients. The examples are proprietary. But one time the client was so sure these are the names that they were going to use for a new program they were going to launch. All they needed was validation. They made it very clear. Yeah, you could ask why, but we don't really need it. We probably won't even have time to implement that. We're very clear. These are names. We just want to know which one's the winner. Very typical situation. So we said, yeah, sure. But before we do that, could we just ask one open-ended question, a spontaneous free association for each of the names, just so that we get an idea of, before we show people these are the different boxes that you can check, what are their own associations. So we did that. So the results, if we discard the whole conversational side of the survey, if we just looked at the quantitative results, everything was exactly what the client expected. Their hypothesis was correct, and everything just seemed to check out. But if we looked at the open-ended results, we clearly see that without being prompted, people had some different associations. Some of those associations had implications on the objectives of the program. So it's not about just the name itself, because if you give people the names without thinking about specifically objectives, they're just looking at the names. So yeah, so at the end, the client actually did spend extra time to incorporate the findings, and they actually went down a different path. create that program. So that was one example I remember vividly. It was a very simple execution. Simple quant survey, we just added a small piece of conversation before the simple survey. The other example that I can think of right now is, I think, quantitative surveys. So I guess these are examples not necessarily specific to one client. These are examples about the power of active listening, the power of listening to what people have to say without giving them certain choices for them to choose from. So the second example, I have a very similar situation, a brand new concept. The concept is so new, a lot of people probably wouldn't even understand. But again, the task was to choose a name for that brand new concept. So the quantitative result, again, seemed to suggest one name. But then if we looked into the open-ended, the conversational side of things, there was a pocket of consumers who articulated very well how they interpreted the name in the context of the objective. So then the client quickly realized they actually should listen to these people more than the other consumers. If we call them the whole sample, mass or representative sample of the population, the pocket of the consumers, then they started to call them the leading edge consumers, because they really get it. They really understand where the client is trying to go. So with that mindset said, whatever they say actually became more useful, more relevant. So with conversational AI, I think the ability of listening to leading edge consumers to separate them from the mass market becomes much more accessible, because otherwise you would have to figure out who might be your leading edge consumers. And then for these leading edge consumers, you would have to recruit them and to have one-on-one interviews. And then in order to scale it, to really see the impact is another story. So yeah, I don't know if these examples are obvious, but I think they are not necessarily to a specific client. It's about the ability to have active listening at scale.
It's quite fascinating that you talk about that, the ability to be able to group like for like respondents. So those that obviously go and fill out large responses, those that are short and concise. There must be a good variation between them all.
Yeah, so certain we have clients using just the conversational data to do segmentation as well. It's very interesting, yeah.
Yeah, cool. And do you typically find some nice little gems in when you do segmentation like that as well?
It's so the what we have seen, what clients have shared with us, I think those are more experimental. The difference, it wouldn't be difference because they wouldn't intentionally compare with a quantitative segmentation using all those metrics, and then so it from what we saw, they were different from expectation, not really experimental. The differences were the variables that went into segmentation were different. A lot of them were not expected because it was through natural conversation. They decided those were the variables through coding, through detecting the themes. Then they use these themes for segmentation. I remember the variables were very different, completely unexpected. That's one thing. The second was the deliverable was very different. It was much richer. It was almost like vividly, we were able to tell the story of this segment versus another segment with a lot of context, with a lot of things to substantiate how one segment was different from another. I can't remember how they actually use it. I think if I want to remember, they actually did a cross-check with the quantitative segmentation as well. From what I remember, it was different. It was more about, not about which one was better. It was just a very different experience.
Very interesting. Okay, so if we just think about, jump back to my prior question about those being cautious about artificial intelligence, why, and if we approach it from a slightly different angle, why do you think market researchers are right in being cautious about AI?
So like privacy is a big thing. I think that's a big thing. Other than that, I would say how to use AI. We need to be very clear about how whatever products are being developed, what are their intended usage. I like to use synthesized data as an example. There are just so many speculations about, or new companies, new startups. All they do is to use GPT to synthesize results. So it's almost like the idea is you do not need to talk to consumers anymore. So I've heard really harsh criticism talking about this is completely dehumanize everything, which in a way I really agree. But I think this kind of thing may have its place, because how often do we have experiences as we create a survey, we create a chat, we don't really know what people will respond to the chat. So if we send it out, it could be scary that whatever we intended to capture, people actually think very differently. So that's why we'll probably do a soft launch. A soft launch it's very small sample size. To what extent it can actually help, we still don't know. So what if we use such technology to help us with the soft launch phase? So we get a larger sample, much faster, possibly better representation. So yeah, I think I would have to say, initially, the first time I heard about it, I was terrified. I thought, wow, this is terrible. Now, I don't even want to be associated with AI anymore. We're just really going down a wrong path. That's my initial reaction. But really, if we think about it, it's about use case. It's about how we make the best use of it. So how we choose to use it responsibly. So I think that's a very good angle for us all just to be at least aware of. It's not about, yes, we need to be very careful, cautious about adopting, but I think it's not about what we're adopting, it's about how we're adopting the newer technologies.
That's right. And so Infotools, the company I work for, we're also a technology provider as well. So we do a lot of analytics and visualization reporting of market research, quant data specifically. And we have a view on AI as well that is similar to yours, where you're not trying to take over market researchers' jobs and make it all technology driven or AI market research less, if that makes sense as well. So we have a ethical stance where we're including the market researcher, we're kind of amplifying them, if you will. And it's a really important piece that vendors have to consider and take. And I think the market responds well to that. They know that, okay, this company is going to embrace the market researcher and help them to do the more mundane aspects of their job, and then let them come in and really have their humanity shine in their role. So
I agree 100%. This is what we call human in the loop. We're a big believer in that. Whatever technology that is being built, I do believe those who actively include human in the loop, help human, give human a role to use the domain expertise to fine-tune things, what AI can do. Those are the ones that will really shine. That's again to make technology human. Technology is making what we do human. We have a better ability to start from a higher vantage point. We are able to see a lot more, and then we can really make whatever our human brain can process, deliver better insights and recommendations for our clients.
That's right. So this is all very interesting. It sounds like conversational AI is essentially a brand new methodology almost. As we know, taking a multi-methodological approach can help us fill gaps in our data sets as well, find those insights that are hiding in plain sight, if you will. With this in mind, do you have any examples to share that can illustrate research reimagined?
Yeah, I'm glad that you say this is more like a new methodology. We struggled on this for a while, whether this is qual, whether it is quant, this is amplified qual, this is amplified quant. But at this point, I think it's more like it's a new methodology. It's not supposed to replace anything, but it's just it's a new way of understanding. So yeah, I mean, in terms of how it is different, there are maybe overall, I would say our clients consider the way we do or our platform, the market research platform, they consider it more as a developmental tool rather than like a survey or validation tool. I think that probably says a lot about how this new methodology, the role of this new methodology. So by that, what they mean is for advertising tests, for example, we have clients who test much more than before. They test from the very beginning to all the way to a video, a fully produced video ready to go to market. So in that process, they may start with a lot of ideas to do like early stage screening and then storyboard, and then it's just iterate very, very quickly. So yeah, I think that's a typical use case. So this new methodology, what it does is because it gives quantitative evaluative metrics, at the same time, it provides a lot of whys. So this combination gives people the ability to iterate. So the goal at the end, for example, screening ideas, the goal a lot of times our clients come to us not because they want to know which one is the winner, but it's almost like all these 12, 15 ideas, they're stimulus materials. We show this to people so that we can get people start to think about what works, what doesn't. So at the end, they can probably come up with better ideas, even beyond what they have already had. So yeah, so I think that's probably the key thing that we have seen, the ability to quickly to get both sides of things to, innovation is a big part for this methodology. Maybe a second thing, I was just reminded, some other studies. I used to work at a company called Nexxt Research, a Canadian company. I adore Nexxt Research because they are the social values experts. They really understand people. I feel like every time I talk to the social value experts, I feel like whatever I say, they already have a label in their head. So you are this type. Yeah. So that's the type of work they do. Very important because with that deep layer of understanding, they can guide their clients to do for messaging, for example. It's not about what you say, it's the motivations behind it. So that implicit alignment is possible through that level of understanding. So the way they see the difference using this methodology versus survey is then they really have the colors, the textures, the stories behind those values. They can bring those values to life because values, they are awesome. They're difficult to understand. A lot of clients love the idea. They're really difficult to understand. But with this methodology, the values can become more accessible. People can relate to, they can make better use of it. So yeah, that's maybe another example.
Very cool. So finally, thinking about the work that you're doing, how is technology like artificial intelligence making the fundamentals of market research stronger?
So I love how you say make it stronger, because I guess as of today, a lot of people are still thinking using AI, the purpose is to make it faster, cheaper. But we believe it's because it's able to make it stronger that really excites us. It's not the faster and cheaper piece. So how is it able to make it stronger? Better participant experience. Maybe that is already enough. We really believe when the participants are engaged, they give us better insights, then they become real participants. They're not respondents, they're collaborators, they're partners. So that's probably already enough. So that's fundamentally better, I think. And then this is applicable in any situation. So the second is, again, the other side of the coin for the researchers. If we are able to equip our researchers with the richness, with the stories so that they can stand in front of their clients, not just talking about the trends, but also to be able to explain those trends. I think that fundamentally is making market researcher better too.
Yeah, exciting. It's all amazing what technology can do, what it can enable rather, not what it can do. I guess that's the goal, and a stronger market research industry is definitely right up there. So if I can recap what we've talked about today, Kathy, that technology can, and when used well, when designed properly and implemented, it can make market research more human. And that requires vendors and market research companies and all sorts to take a human-centered approach to technology, like you're doing at Nexxt Intelligence. So with conversational AI, helping to dig in and to probe particular questions to get that rich response that market researchers can then use to really, I guess, identify things and validate, but also go beyond what they were initially validating to truly understand what's moving consumers to or their behavior, etc. And we talked about some of the things that you're able to do with conversational AI is to increase engagement, as I said before, to probe, to seek that deeper insight, and also to try and dig in and get into those deeper feelings and emotions as well, because we know those are really key in terms of trying to create messages that resonate, etc., with the consumer. We had a look at some of the things that excited you about AI. So engagement, deeper insights at scale through that intelligent probing, and now the way the open ends can actually be incredibly valuable. So you're almost getting this mix of quant and qual together, which is really cool. We talked about some of the reasons why market researchers are right in being cautious about the privacy reasons, etc. But again, if you approach it and use it right, have the right use cases, then there can be some absolute gold for those that are brave enough to take on these things. I guess it's not really about brave, it's just about seeing and knowing that it works and having that data in front of you. And once you see it in action, you see it in play, then there's a lot more comfort that those can have with adopting things like this. So I think that pretty much was a good sum up. Anything you wanted to add to that, Kathy?
That's a great summary. Thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you very much for having us on the episode today.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
You're quite all right. And for the listeners out there, if you have liked what you've heard today, feel free to subscribe to the podcast, share it with others, or even leave a review as well. We'd be very grateful for that. And thank you for listening to Now That's Significant.